There's a window in my memory that never fades. It's yellow, soft, sun-worn, and forever waiting. People used to whisper about that window. About the letters. About the boy who wrote them, even when the world told him not to. About the girl who vanished without saying goodbye. They don't know I never stopped reading them. Or that I wrote back. They don't know the silence was never the end. Only the space between the words. But I remember everything. Because I was the girl who ran and Jonah was the boy who waited. And this is the story of the letters we left behind. They say you can fall in love slowly, like dusk slipping into night. But for me and Jonah, there was no fall, only knowing. He lived in the weather-worn cottage by the sea, where wild roses climbed the fence like they, too, were trying to find their way in. I used to sneak through the back gate with sand between my toes, pockets full of sea glass, and my heart beating to the rhythm of his quiet. "Race you to the fig tree!" I'd shout, not waiting for an answer. I never did. And he'd follow, always. That was Jonah, silent, steady, all blue-gray eyes and salt-tousled hair. He rarely spoke, but when he did, it felt like listening to the ocean from inside a shell. We were everything the other wasn't. I burned bright and reckless, and he was cool and sure, like the sea just before a storm. Where I leapt, he anchored me. Where he hesitated, I pulled him forward. We never kissed, not then. We didn't need to. Some things speak louder in silence than words ever can. The night before I left, the sky looked like it had been painted for us, deep indigo scattered with silver, the kind of sky you don't forget. We sat beneath the old fig tree, the one that had been ours since we were 10. My knees were drawn to my chest, chin resting lightly as the sea whispered in the distance. Jonah sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, but not touching. I wanted to say so much. That I was scared. That I wasn't sure who I'd be without the salt air and the cliff paths and him. But the words tangled inside me. So I said the only thing I could. "I'll write you," I whispered, picking at the hem of my dress. "Every day." He didn't move. Didn't speak. And then I added, softer still, "And when I come back, I'll knock on the yellow window." I reached for his hand. It was calloused, warm, familiar. I kissed it gently, then stood too fast. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to make it harder. I ran barefoot, wild, just like always. But for the first time, I didn't look back. I didn't sleep that night. The train left at dawn, but I stayed awake listening to the sea echo inside my chest. When I arrived in the city, the silence was deafening. No gulls. No waves. Just engines, glass buildings, and people who didn't meet your eyes. I opened my suitcase in my shoebox-sized dorm. Among the books and dresses was the shell Jonah gave me when we were 14. He told me to press it to my ear whenever I felt lost. I held it that first night like it was the last piece of home I had. The next morning, I got an email from my mother. Jonah left a letter on the window again. Neatly folded. Facing the road. I stared at the words. My hands trembled. He'd started already. He didn't say goodbye, but he was still speaking to me in the only way he knew how. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know how. I wasn't good with stillness, I needed chaos, noise, people. But when I sat in a crowded coffee shop with my journal open, I found myself writing to him. I didn't send it. But I wrote again the next day. And the next. The letters filled a box beneath my bed. Pages of everything I never said. Some were long and rambling. Some were short, only a line or two. But every single one was written with him in mind. Then, one rainy Tuesday, I sent the first one. No return address. Just his name. Just my handwriting. It felt like putting my heart into a bottle and tossing it into the sea. He never mentioned receiving it. But he kept writing. There were late-night lectures, street lights, heartbreaks, and cities that never slept. I lived in tiny apartments, chased impossible dreams, and learned how to be loud in a room full of strangers. But in all those years, I never once stopped writing to him. I told him about the first boy who broke my heart, how he smiled like he meant it, but his words felt hollow. I told Jonah how I cried on the floor of my kitchen, wishing I were back under the fig tree instead. I told him about the time I got lost in Paris and found myself by the Seine, the water reminding me of the cove we used to run to when the world felt too big. I told him about my dreams, my doubts, the way I still couldn't fall asleep without imagining the sound of the sea. And every time I went home for the holidays and passed the old path toward the cliffs, I didn't go to the cottage. I couldn't. I was afraid of what I'd see, or worse, what I wouldn't. But every visit, someone would mention it. Still writing, that boy is, Mrs. Caro said once in the bakery. Yellow window, same as ever. It became part of village lore. Tourists asked about it. Children peeked through the gate. But no one ever touched the letters. I heard rumors someone tried once, and Jonah came out quietly and said, "They're not for you." And they never tried again. I kept all of his letters. My mother would collect them in a shoebox and place them in my room. She never asked questions. She didn't need to. Because every letter was dated, signed the same way. J. For M. Some were full pages. Others only said things like, "The sea was loud today. I think it misses you." Or, "The fig tree's grown taller." Or once, simply, "Still here." It hurt how much he stayed when I kept running. But maybe that's what love is. Staying. Even when you don't know if they'll come back. The life I'd built layered and carefully arranged shattered in a single week. A job I thought would last forever let me go without warning. A man I thought I'd marry confessed he was in love with someone else. And for the first time in years, I didn't have an answer, a plan, or a place to run. I packed a single bag and disappeared to a cabin 2 hours out of the city. No phone. No noise. Just air and silence. I brought only one thing with me, a letter. I'd written it 2 years ago, on a particularly cold night when the city lights didn't feel bright enough to keep the darkness out. I had just reread a letter Jonah had sent me, the one where he wrote, "The cove is quiet now. Sometimes I walk there alone. I listen for your laugh. It still echoes." That night, I wrote him back. A real letter. Not the ones I usually hid in drawers. This one, I addressed. I signed it. But I never sent it. I couldn't. Because it said too much. I unfolded it now, in the hush of the woods, and read the words aloud like a confession. Jonah. I miss the girl I was when I was with you. The barefoot one who believed the world was soft and the sea would always carry her home. I'm scared I've changed too much. That you've moved on. That the letters are all that's left of us. But if there's even a small part of you still waiting, I want to come back. I just don't know how. Myra. My voice cracked on the last line. And I realized something. I wasn't just missing him. I was missing me. The next morning, I packed the letter and drove straight to the coast. I didn't call. I didn't warn anyone. I just drove. As I crossed into the village, everything felt smaller, quieter, untouched. The cliffs still hummed. The air still tasted of salt and memory. And then I saw it, his cottage. Still standing. Still weather-worn. And the window. Still yellow. And on its sill, as if no time had passed at all, sat a folded letter. Just one. Waiting. The tires crunched against the gravel as I pulled up to the cottage. I turned off the engine, but my fingers stayed curled tightly around the wheel. I didn't move. Not yet. The sea rustled in the distance, and the cliffs cast long shadows over the road. The air smelled like lilacs and salt. Everything felt exactly the same and entirely different. My heart was a drum in my chest. Slowly, I stepped out of the car. In my coat pocket, the old letter burned like a heartbeat. Its edges were soft from years of folding and unfolding. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe because I wasn't 17 anymore. Maybe because I'd spent too long pretending it didn't exist. I walked toward the gate, pausing when I reached the garden. It had grown wild. Lavender spilled onto the path. The fig tree stretched higher, its roots stronger. The wind tugged at my scarf like it remembered me too. And then I saw him through the yellow-painted window. He sat at the little kitchen table, a mug in his hands, his back straight, face turned slightly toward the light. He hadn't changed much, just a few lines around his eyes, silver at his temples. He looked up. And our eyes met. The years collapsed. He stood slowly, gently placing the mug down, as if afraid any sudden movement might break the moment. I stepped forward. He opened the window. Just like that. You kept it yellow, I said, barely more than a whisper. His voice was rougher, deeper, but familiar in the way sea air is always familiar after rain. I never missed a day. My fingers trembled as I reached into my coat. I pulled out the letter, the one I wrote 2 years ago, the one I never had the courage to send, and placed it gently on the windowsill beside the others. He looked at it. Read the date. His expression softened. I never stopped writing either, I said. I just didn't know if I could come back. For a long second, we didn't speak. He didn't ask why I waited so long. He didn't ask what had happened. Because he already knew. Instead, he stepped back and opened the window wider. And I stepped in. The cottage smelled like cedar and sea salt. As I stepped inside, everything came rushing back, the way the floor creaked near the sink, the soft hum of the wind through the window panes, the woven rug I used to sit on as a child when Jonah read books aloud in a voice just barely above the tide. He hadn't changed it much. There were still plants on the windowsills, glass jars full of shells, an old clock ticking softly on the wall. But there was something new, too, something deeper. A quiet. Not of emptiness, but of peace. We didn't say much that first hour. He made tea. I wondered. My fingertips brushed over the neat stacks of letters on the table. My name was on every single one. Year after year after year. He saw me looking. "They're yours," he said. My throat closed up. "I thought I'd lost you," I whispered. "That maybe you stopped waiting." Jonah tilted his head, just slightly. "I never waited," he said. "I just stayed." He placed a hand over mine, warm, steady. And something inside me uncotted. We sat at the table for hours. Talking. Laughing. Remembering. Catching up on the years we'd lived separately, while still writing to each other like we never stopped belonging. There were no apologies. No accusations. Only the understanding that some love doesn't need to be chased. Some love simply waits in the window, with the sunrise, until you're ready to come home. That night, as the moon spilled silver onto the cliffs, I stood by the yellow window and pressed my palm to the glass from the inside. For the first time in years, there was no letter sitting on the sill. There didn't need to be. The story hadn't ended. It had just come home. If this story moved you even a little, please like or comment, it helps more people find it. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a love story whispered just for you. We're building something special here, a space for stories that speak to the soul. I'm so glad you're part of it.